The scan came back wrong, and then it came back wrong in a way that made the first wrong look like a kindness. I was the lawkeeper, on the third bench of the survey ship, quiet audit, and my work was simple. When the coherence found a thing it did not understand, it scanned that thing, and I read the local laws the scan returned, and rewrote them until the thing was understood. That is what my people did. We did not build weapons the way the lesser fleets built them, hulls and guns, and the patience to use them. We edited. We reached into the place where a thing's mass was held, and we revised the number downward until the thing was a mist and then a memory. 600 worlds had learned this. 600 worlds had stopped arguing. The human ship hung 400,000 kilometers off our prow and would not resolve. "Run it again," said Oversterran, who held the high bench and had held it for longer than I had been alive. Her voice did not shake. It was the first time I had heard it not be entirely certain. I ran it again. The scan went out, a wash of measuring light that touched the ship and read its laws back to us. Every survey we had ever done began this way, a polite undressing of the target's physics so the editors could find the seam and pull. The light went out. The light came back. Mass undefined. That is not a reading. Undefined is what the instrument says when it has failed. So I cleared the bench and warmed the array and sent the scan a third time. And this time I watched the raw return crawl across my surface myself, law by law, the way you watch a thing you do not trust. Length resolve, 2,100 meters of it, a long blunt wedge. Ugly the way a tool is ugly, with no grace anywhere on it and no part of it that seemed to want to be looked at. Composition resolved, alloy. Ceramic, carbon, nothing exotic, nothing we did not have names for. Power signature resolved, and it was enormous, and it was steady, and it told us nothing. Mass. The field stayed empty. "It has no mass," said the junior at the second bench, young Daoun, and I heard the relief trying to get into his voice. Because a thing with no mass was a thing we could edit to nothing without even trying. "No," I said. "It has mass. The scan can't move the number to read it." That was the first wrongness, and I want to be careful here, because everything that came after grew from this one root, and I have had a long time to understand the root. When we scanned a world, the scan did not merely measure the world. It touched the world's laws, and the laws gave a little, the way anything gives when you lean on it, and the giving was what we read. The reading and the editing were the same gesture begun. Every mass we had ever measured had flinched, just slightly, under the measuring. That flinch was how it could be moved. The human number did not flinch. I leaned the whole array on it. I put more measuring light on that hull than I had ever put on anything, enough to soften the core of a moon, and I read the mass field, and it sat there, fixed, a single value that would not be coaxed up or down by a hair. The instrument was not failing. The instrument was working perfectly and reporting that there was a number here it was not permitted to touch. "Overs," I said. "It refuses to change." She came down off the high bench, which she did not do. She stood over my surface and read the return herself, slowly, the way she read everything. And I watched her understand it one law at a time, and I watched her decide not to be afraid yet, because fear was a luxury and she had spent her whole life not affording it. "Edit it," she said. So we edited it. This is the part the others got wrong when they told the story afterward, the ones who lived to tell it. They said we attacked. We did not attack. We did to that ship exactly what we had done to 600 worlds and never once thought of as attack, because to us it was less than that. It was tidying. I opened the mass field and I reached for the value and I began to revise it downward the way I had revised 1,000 things, and the value did not come. I pulled harder. The coherence does not pull with engines. It pulls with agreement. 100 lawkeepers on 100 benches across the fleet, all reaching for the same number and agreeing, together, that it should be smaller, until the universe in that one place gives up and agrees with us. We had unmade dreadnoughts this way. We had unmade the dreadnoughts of species who built nothing but dreadnoughts, who had spent 10,000 years learning to armor a number, and we had reached past the armor and revised them to fog in the time it takes to say a short word. I gave the human number the full agreement of the quiet audit's entire bench, 40 lawkeepers, the most refined editing instrument in this arm of the dark. The number did not move. "More," said Terran, and she did not say it like a command. She said it like a question she already knew the answer to and needed answered anyway. I signaled the fleet. We were not one ship. That was the thing the human captain could not have known, and the thing that made what came next so much worse to carry. The quiet audit was the smallest of us, the instrument that went first because it was the cheapest to lose. Behind it, holding station in the dark where the human scan had not yet reached, the coherence had brought everything. 1,100 editing hulls. The choir of revision in full muster, every lawkeeper the order possessed. The same agreement that had quieted 600 worlds now turned as one toward a single ugly wedge that would not resolve. 1,100 hulls reached for one number and agreed that it should be smaller. I felt the agreement arrive. It came through my bench like a pressure. The largest consensus I had ever been part of. The universe in that place leaning so hard toward our will that I felt the local laws bow. A star, had it been where the human ship was, would have come apart. A fleet of any other make would have ceased to have ever been built. The human number sat at its value and refused. And then, this is the part I still cannot make sound the way it felt, the number pushed back, not toward us. It did not reach for our masses the way we had reached for its. It simply held its value so completely, so without any give at all, that our agreement had nowhere to go. We had leaned 1,100 benches of will against a wall, expecting the wall to be a mist, and the wall was a wall, and a wall that does not move turns your own weight against you. The agreement we had spent rebounded. It came back along the same channels we had sent it through, 1,100 ways of unmaking with nothing left to unmake but the things that had sent them. Pull back, I said. Pull back, break the consensus, pull back. You cannot break a consensus of 1,100 in the time it takes for the consensus to come home. The quiet audit's third bench failed first, which was my bench, and I survived only because I was already reaching to break it when it went. The lawkeepers to my left and right did not have their hands on the channel. They were holding the agreement open, the way you are trained to, the way it is safe to, when you are leaning on something that is supposed to give. Their masses caught the rebound. I will not describe what the rebound did to a mass that had spent its whole life learning to be edited. I will only say that the benches went quiet down the line, one after another, the way a row of held breaths goes when the thing they were held against turns out to be the one solid object in the dark. 40 lawkeepers on the quiet audit. 6 of us were still reading when it ended, and the human ship had not moved. That is what I need you to hold, because it is the whole of it. The ugly wedge had not lit a weapon. It had not turned. It had not so much as adjusted its station. We had reached for its mass with the largest agreement the coherence had ever made, and it had answered by being exactly what it was, no more and no less, a number that did not change, and our reach for it had broken on the not changing like surf on a stone, and the stone had not noticed the surf. Overs, I said, into the quiet. Overs the fleet, I know, she said. She was looking at the high readout where 1,100 hulls had been, and where now there were the readings of 1,100 hulls that had each, at the same instant, leaned their entire being against an immovable value and felt their own weight come back. The choir of revision had not been fired upon. No weapon had reached them. They had reached, and the thing they reached for had simply declined, and a decline at that scale is a thing you do to yourself. I read the muster. I made myself read all of it. Of 1,100 editing hulls, the choir of revision had 4 still answering. The whole of it had taken, by the quiet audit's own clock, 2 minutes and 9 seconds. We had spent 2 minutes and 9 seconds scanning a thing for every variable a thing can have, and we had found every variable but one, and the one we missed was the one that was load-bearing. We had measured its length and its alloy and its power. We had never once measured whether it would agree to be measured. It would not. It's hailing us, Down said. His voice had gone to a place past fear, the flat place where you simply report. The human ship. It's opening a channel. I looked at the wedge through the forward array. 400,000 kilometers of empty dark, and then the long, blunt hull, patient, unlit, a tool waiting at rest with the work not yet begun, and I understood all at once and far too late what the survey had actually told me if I had been lawkeeper enough to read it. We had not detected a ship. We had detected a constant. The coherence's whole power was the power to make the universe disagree with itself, to find the one place a law was soft and push, and we had finally pushed against a thing that did not contain a soft place anywhere, a thing whose entire design was a single answer to a single question, and the answer was no. Put it through, said Terran. And the channel opened, and a human voice came across 400,000 kilometers of the dark we had ruled for 9,000 years, and it was not loud, and it was not cruel, and that was the worst of it. This is the survey vessel plumb line of the Terran fixed fleet, the voice said. We registered a measurement attempt. Be advised the attempt is the offense. Stand off and we have no further business. That was all. The channel did not close. It simply waited, the way the ship waited, with the patience of a thing that has all the time there is. I have replayed that hail more times than I can count, and what undoes me about it is the word business. Not threat, not warning. Business, as though we were a thing that had wandered into a workshop and put our hand on the one tool that must not be touched, and the human at the bench had not even looked up, had only said mildly don't and gone back to the work. The coherence had quieted 600 worlds, and the human ship spoke to us the way you speak to a child reaching for a blade. Turin did not answer the hail. I watched her choose not to, and I understood the choice, because to answer was to admit that the thing at 400,000 kilometers was owed an answer, and the overs of a coherent survey ship did not owe answers to the things she surveyed. She owed them a reading and an edit and a silence afterward. She had spent her whole life on the giving end of the silence. Reform the consensus, she said, quieter this time. We do not lean on the value. We go around it. Find me the laws beside the mass, momentum, binding, the field that holds its alloy together. We cannot move the number it protects. We will move the numbers it does not. It was, I want to be fair to her, a brilliant order. It was the order of a law-keeper who had understood the problem in 2 minutes and 9 seconds and adapted to it. The human number would not change. Very well, we would not touch the human number. We would touch everything around it, unbind the alloy, slacken the bonds that held 2,100 meters of hull together, and let a constant mass rattle apart inside a hull we were permitted to edit. Down, I said. Give me the binding laws. Read them off the survey. Don't reach for them yet. He read them. And as he read them, I began to understand the second wrongness. And the second wrongness was worse than the first because the first had only killed us and the second told us why. The binding laws would not separate from the mass. When you scan an ordinary thing, its laws come apart in your reading like the threads of a cloth. Here is its mass, here is its momentum, here is the field that holds its substance, each its own number, each editable on its own. That separability is what makes editing possible. You cannot revise a thing you cannot take apart. And everything we had ever surveyed had come apart under the reading, because everything in the universe is an argument. Its own laws are still having, and an argument has seams. The human hull had no seams. Its mass and its binding and its momentum were not separate laws that happened to agree. They were one law, written once, and the one law was the value that would not change. There was no field beside the mass to slacken. There was no number it did not protect. The thing was not a structure holding a constant at its heart. The thing was the constant all the way down, 2,100 meters of a single fixed answer wearing alloy like a coat. It's not assembled, I said. Overs. It isn't built out of laws that agree. It's one law. There's nothing to go around. The whole hull is the value we can't touch. She was quiet for a moment. On the high bench her hands had gone still, and in my people's stillness is the deepest tell there is, because we are always reaching, always leaning, always editing the world a little smaller to fit our understanding of it, and to go still is to admit there is a thing the editing cannot reach. That's not possible, she said, but she said it the way you say a thing you no longer believe, to hear how it sounds out loud. It scanned us back, Down said suddenly, overs. When it said it registered our attempt, it didn't see our weapons. We don't have weapons. It read the consensus forming, it measured us measuring it, and it told us to stand off, and we didn't, and we lost 1,100 hulls to our own reach. It warned us. The warning was the mercy. It already gave us the mercy. The channel was still open. The human ship had said its single sentence and then simply continued to exist at us, which was the only thing it had ever done and the only thing it needed to do. Hail it back, Taryn said. I had not expected that. To hail it back was to answer, and to answer was to owe, and I had watched her refuse to owe it 3 minutes ago. But 3 minutes ago, the choir of revision had been 1,100 strong, and now it was 4, and a lawkeeper who has lost the largest consensus her order ever made will reach for the thing she has left, which is words. This is Overs Taryn of the survey vessel Quiet Audit, she said, and her voice held, and I was proud of it holding even then, even knowing what I know now about how little the holding bought us. We surveyed an error. We withdraw the survey. Identify the make of your hull. The coherence has measured every made thing in this arm and has no entry for a fixed constant of your size. What are you? There was a pause. Not a long one. The pause of a thing deciding how much of the truth a child can hold. We're a reference, the human voice said, same as a meter bar or a clock that doesn't drift. You build your whole craft on changing what things are. So someone had to build a thing that doesn't. We're the thing the changes get measured against. You don't survey us. You can't. There's no soft place in a standard. That's the entire point of a standard. I am a lawkeeper. I have spent my life in the place where numbers are made to bend. And I tell you that when the human said there is no soft place in a standard, I felt the floor of my understanding go out from under me, because it was true, and I had known it was true the way you know a thing without ever having had to say it. Every mass in the universe is soft somewhere. That softness is the universe still arguing with itself about what that thing should be. We had built an empire on finding the soft place and winning the argument. And here was a thing with no argument in it. A thing that had been built deliberately by hands that understood our whole art, to be the one object the art could not reach, not armored against editing. Armoring is a number, and numbers bend, but exempt from it, a fixed point the bending was defined against. You cannot revise the meter. You can only revise everything by comparing it to the meter. They had not made a stronger ship, they had made the ruler. How many, Taryn said. Just that. Her composure was a thing she was holding the way you hold a door against a weight, with both hands and your whole body, and the certain knowledge that it does not matter how well you hold it. How many references? 41, the human said. 41 hulls in the fixed fleet. We don't build more than we need. You're the third party in 600 years to put a survey on one. The other two are still standing off. A pause. We'd like to keep it that way. Stand off, 41. The number went through the quiet audit like cold. Not a fleet. Not an armada. 41 hulls in the whole of the human war make, against a coherence that counted its editing hulls in the tens of thousands across. The worlds it had quieted. We had brought 1,100 of those tens of thousands to this one survey, the way you bring a heavy enough instrument to be sure. And the heavy enough instrument was 4 hulls now, and the thing it had been brought to measure had not moved. And there were 41 of them. We had found one. Withdraw the consensus entirely, Terran said low to the bench. All of it. We do not reach for it again. We do not reach for it in any way. Down, take the survey off the array. Take the light off the hull. We are not measuring it. As of this instant, the coherence is not measuring it. Why? I said. I should not have asked. But I had 6 benches dead to my left, and I needed to hear her say it. Because the measuring is the reaching, she said, and the reaching is what it answers, and it only answers what we begin. It has not turned a weapon on us because it has no weapons. It does not need them. It is a wall, and a wall only hurts the things that run into it. We ran into it. We will stop running into it. We will take our light off its hull, and we will hold this station, and we will not so much as look at it too hard. And if the all-coherence has any sense left in it, the order will do the same to the other 40. She was right. I want that on the record, in whatever record this is. Everything she said was right, and if the orders she served had listened to her, fewer would have died than died. The wall does not chase. The constant does not pursue. You can stand beside a meter bar your whole life, and it will never once reach for you. All you have to do is not try to revise it. The all-coherence did not listen to her, but that came later. First, the quiet audit took its light off the hull, and for the first time since the survey began, no part of the coherence was reaching for the human ship. And the human ship, which had only ever answered what we began, went quiet and still and waited. A tool at rest, the work declined. 400,000 kilometers of patient dark between us and a number that would not change. For 6 hours we held station and did not reach, and the not reaching was the hardest discipline I have ever kept. Because to be a lawkeeper is to reach, and a lawkeeper who sits with his hands off the world is a lawkeeper drowning slowly in his own held breath. But Terran had not stopped working. She had only stopped reaching for the ship. On the 7th hour she came down off the high bench again and stood at my surface and laid out, in the flat voice of someone who has decided to be brave one more time, a third approach, and I want to record it because it was the cleverest thing any of us tried and it failed worse than anything. And the way it failed taught me the last of what I needed to know. We cannot edit the value, she said. We cannot edit the laws beside it because there are no laws beside it. It is one law. Very well. We will not touch the ship at all. We will edit the dark around it. We will revise the vacuum it sits in, thin the space, fold the frame, bring the local laws of the emptiness down around the hull until the emptiness itself does the pressing for us. We do not lean on the wall. We lean on the floor the wall stands on and we tip it. I tell you it was good. The coherence had toppled worlds this way when their cores were too dense to edit directly. You did not unmake the mountain. You unmade the ground beneath it. And the vacuum around the human ship was ordinary vacuum, our vacuum, full of soft places, full of laws that flinched. We could edit the dark. We had always been able to edit the dark. 6 benches, Terran said, quietly, not against the hull. Against the frame around it 10 kilometers out, a shell. Bring the shell in. We reached for the dark. And the dark gave, the way dark always gives, the laws of the empty space folding obediently under our agreement, a shell of revised vacuum closing in around the human ship like a hand closing around a stone. I felt the frame come in, 9 kilometers, 8. The local laws of the emptiness bent to our will exactly as they were supposed to, and for the first time since the survey began, I felt the old certainty come back into the bench. The certainty that there was always a soft place, always a floor to tip, always a way. The shell reached the hull and stopped. It did not break on the hull, it simply stopped. The way water stops at a shoreline it has reached 1,000 times, because the human value did not only refuse to change, it defined the space it sat in. The vacuum around the ship was not our vacuum after all, not within the last meter of the hull. Within that meter the laws of the emptiness were measured against the standard, and a thing measured against a standard cannot be used to crush the standard, because the standard is what tells the emptiness how big it is. We had folded the dark down to the surface of the hull, and at the surface of the hull the dark had become the human ship's dark, fixed, referenced, a vacuum that knew exactly how large it was supposed to be and would not be made smaller, because the meter bar was right there telling it. "Pull the shell back," Taryn said, and her voice had the flat sound now, the sound of a brave thing running out of brave. "Pull it back slowly. Do not let it rebound." We pulled it back slowly. It did not rebound. We had not leaned hard enough for the homecoming to kill, only hard enough to learn. And what I learned drawing 6 benches of revised vacuum back off the surface of a hull that had simply declined to let its own dark be edited was the thing that finished my hope. You could not even go around the human ship through the space it occupied, because the space it occupied was no longer space that could be edited. The standard did not just refuse to change. It made a small region of the universe refuse with it. A meter of fixed dark all the way around, 41 times over out past the line. "It carries its own frame," I said. "Overs, we can't tip the floor. The last meter of the floor is part of the wall. There's no soft place anywhere near it. Not in the hull, not in the laws, not even in the dark it stands in." Taryn looked at the human ship for a long moment. The ugly patient wedge that had let us fold the whole dark down onto it, and had not so much as registered the folding as an offense, because the folding had not reached it, because nothing reached it. "No," she agreed. "There isn't." And she sent the order to take all 6 benches off the dark, and we sat again with our hands off the world, drowning in the held breath, and waited for the all-coherence to tell us to do the one thing left, which was the thing that would kill 40,000 of us, because the all-coherence had never in 9,000 years learned the word the human ship had taught us in an afternoon, which was stop. The all-coherence's reply came 9 hours later, and I knew before I read it that it would not be the order Taryn had asked for, because the thing that ruled my people had never in 9,000 years received the report we had just sent it and answered with standoff. "We are the editors of the real." That is not a boast in my mouth anymore. It is the disease that killed us. To rule by revision is to believe, at the bottom of yourself, that there is no value the right consensus cannot move, that every wall is only a number you have not leaned on hard enough. The all-coherence read the report of the quiet audit. 1,100 hulls reduced to 4 by their own reach, a constant that would not flinch, and it did not read a wall. It read a record. It read a value the survey ship's consensus had been too small to move, and it sent the largest consensus the coherence had ever assembled to move it. "They're refusing the withdrawal," Dayan said, reading the order off the long channel. He had stopped pretending his voice was steady. "Overs. They're not standing off. They're mustering the second choir. All of it." I knew what all of it meant. I had read the order of edit in my training the way a child reads the size of the sea. The second choir of revision was the deep consensus, the one held in reserve behind the surveying fleets, the agreement so large it was not kept assembled because keeping it assembled bent the laws of the space it sat in, 40,000 editing hulls. Every lawkeeper of consequence the order possessed, save the ones already dead on the benches around me. 40,000 benches all reaching at once for a single value, the deepest, surest no the coherence could pronounce against the existence of a thing. 40,000 hulls to revise one number that would not be revised. "Taryn," I said, "tell them, send it again. Tell them it doesn't move. Tell them what happens when the consensus comes home. Tell them I have told them 4 times," she said. "They have read it 4 times. They believe the survey ship failed because the survey ship was small. They are not wrong about anything except the one thing, which is that the wall is a wall and not a heavy door. They cannot believe in a wall. We built 9,000 years on there being no walls." She looked at the 4 hulls that were left of our muster, dark on the readout, holding their dead. "They will lean 40,000 benches against the meter bar, and the meter bar will not move, and 40,000 benches will feel their own weight come home, and there will not be a second choir of revision after today, and the human ship will not have turned. It will be exactly where it is, doing exactly what it does, which is nothing, which is the worst thing in the dark." "Then warn it," I said. "Warn the ship. Tell it what's coming. If we tell it 40,000 hulls are about to reach for it, maybe it what?" she said, and there was no cruelty in it. Only the terrible patience of someone who had already followed the thought to its end. "Moves, it does not move. Defends itself? It has no weapons. It does not need them. The reaching is its only wound, and the reaching is ours, not its. Forgives us? It does not have to forgive what it does not feel. We will not be reaching at it, lawkeeper. We will be reaching at the one fixed point the universe has, with everything we have, and the universe will do to us what it always does to a thing that pushes a wall. The human ship is not the danger. The human ship is the wall the danger runs into. The danger is us. It has always been us." She had all of it, 9 hours before the second choir arrived, and she could do nothing with it, because a lawkeeper on a survey ship does not command the all-coherence. She only reports to it, and the report had been read and disbelieved. This is the part of my people I have had the longest time to hate. We were so sure there was no wall that we drowned, trying to prove the wall was a door, and the wall never lifted a hand, because a wall has no hands, because a wall does not need them. The second choir came in over the next 11 hours, and I watched it arrive on the long array, hull after hull dropping out of the dark in formations so vast they had their own weather. The local laws bending visibly around so much assembled will. 40,000 editing hulls. I had never seen a tenth of that in one place. The space between us and the human ship, which had been 400,000 empty kilometers, filled with the coherence's whole reserve, the deep consensus, the agreement that had been built to be so total that no value could stand against it. The human ship did not react to the muster. Of course it did not. No one was measuring it yet. It hung at its station 2,100 meters of patient alloy, and 40,000 hulls of the most refined unmaking instrument in this arm of the dark gathered around it like a tide around a stone, and the stone did not notice the tide, because the stone never notices the tide, because that is what it is to be a stone. They're forming the consensus, Down whispered. I felt it begin. Even from the broken quiet audit, even with our light off the hull, even holding no part of it, I felt 40,000 benches start to agree. The pressure of it was unlike anything in my life. The whole local frame of the universe leaned toward the human ship, toward the single value at the heart of it, 40,000 ways of saying you will be smaller, all aligning into one voice, the deepest no the coherence had ever assembled, lowering itself onto a number like the order's whole weight onto a single point. Don't, Terran said. Not to us. To them. To the 40,000. On a channel they had stopped reading. Don't. It does not move. It has never moved. You are not leaning on a value. You are leaning on the thing values are measured against. Don't. The second choir of revision reached for the one number in the dark that would not change. I have tried in the time since to find words for what the human ship did in answer, and I keep arriving at the same place, which is that it did not do anything in answer, and the not doing was the entire catastrophe. It did not push back. It did not strike. It did not so much as light a port. It held its value with the same complete and effortless refusal it had held it against the quiet audit's 40 benches, the same refusal it would have held against 4 or 40 million. Because a constant does not scale its no to the size of the question. It simply is the answer, and the answer is the same to everyone who asks. 40,000 benches leaned the deepest consensus in the coherence's history against a wall that did not move, and the consensus had nowhere to go, and a consensus with nowhere to go comes home. I watched it come home. I watched it on the long array, the only place in the universe from which the whole of it could be seen at once, and I will carry the watching to the end of whatever I am now. The reach went out, and the reach found the immovable value, and the reach broke on it. All of it at once, 40,000 ways of unmaking with nothing left to unmake but the 40,000 things that had begun them. The deep consensus turned in its own channels and came back along itself, and the second choir of revision, the reserve of my people, the agreement we had built to prove that nothing could stand against us, met the exact and total weight of its own reach for a thing that would not give. The space between us and the human ship, which had filled with 40,000 hulls, emptied, not in fire. There was no fire. The coherence does not kill with fire. It kills by revision, and now the revision had been turned, gently, completely, by a thing that had only declined to be revised, and 40,000 editing hulls each felt the full weight of the deepest no they had ever pronounced returned to the only thing left for it to fall on. The readout did not show explosions. It showed values going quiet. 40,000 fixed points of will, winking out one after another, and then all together, as the agreement they had spent against the wall came back and unmade the agreeers, because that is what a wall does, and the only thing it has ever done, and the only thing it ever needs to do. It took by the quiet audit's clock 51 seconds. 51 seconds for the coherence to spend its deep reserve against a thing that did not move, and feel the spending return, and stop being a thing that had a deep reserve. The human ship had not turned. The human ship had not lit a weapon. The human ship hung exactly where it had hung for the last 20 hours, 2,100 meters of patient alloy. The work declined, and around it the largest consensus my people ever made had reached for it and met itself coming back. Overs, I said. There was nothing after the word. I had meant to say something, and there was nothing. Tyran did not answer for a long moment. She was reading the array, the way she read everything, slowly, the deep reserve of the coherence going quiet across it value by value, and I watched her finish the reading and set it down. And when she spoke, her voice had finally stopped holding the door, because there was no longer a door, because there was no longer a thing on the other side of it to hold out. 40,000, she said, and one survey ship, against a value that would not change. She looked at the readout where the second choir had been. We have been the editors of the reel for 9,000 years, lawkeeper. We forgot that an editor needs a thing that holds still to edit against. They remembered, they built it, and we ran our whole self into it. She was quiet. 4 hulls of the first choir, 6 benches of this ship, us. That is what is left of the muster, the all-coherence sent to revise the meter bar. The channel from the human ship opened again. The same flat, patient voice across a space that had been 40,000 hulls and was now empty dark. That's the second attempt logged, it said. We register no further reaching. Be advised, the offense was the measurement. There is no further business between us. A pause and then, almost gently, the way you say a thing to someone who has just lost more than they can yet count. Stand off. We don't move. There's nothing here to fight. There never was. Not all of the second choir reached. I learned this afterward from the readings, and it is the one mercy in the whole account that belongs to my own people and not to the wall, so I set it down. When the deep consensus formed, some 30 hulls at the far edge of the muster did not join it. Their keepers had read the quiet audit's report on the way in. The 40 benches, the rebound, 6 of us left reading, and unlike the all-coherence, those 30 had believed it. They held their benches open but did not commit them. They watched the great consensus lower itself onto the human value, and at the last instant, when they felt the reach begin to find no give, when they felt the whole frame of the local universe lean against a thing that would not lean back, those 30 keepers did the thing no keeper of the coherence had ever been trained to do. They let go. It should not have been possible. To break from a consensus of 40,000 is to tear your own will out of a current larger than a star, and the tearing should have killed them as surely as the rebound killed the rest. But they had been at the edge, and they had not yet fully committed, and they had believed the report, and so they let go a half instant before the reach came home, and the rebound, when it came, found their channels already closed, their wills already withdrawn, nothing of theirs still leaning on the wall for the wall to give back. The reach came home to the 39,970 who had committed, and it did not come home to the 30 who had let go, because there was nothing of theirs out on the wall to return. 30 hulls, out of 40,000. The only survivors of the second choir of revision, and they survived not because they were strong, not because they reached correctly, but because they had, alone among the deep consensus, believed a thing they did not want to believe and taken their hands off the world in time. I think about those 30 more than I think about almost anything, because they are the proof of the only thing that ever saved any of us. Not power, not the right reach, stopping. The human fleet had said it on the first hail, in its flat and patient voice, and it had said it on the last, and it said it the same way every time, because it was the only thing it ever needed to say. Stand off. The 30 stood off in the last half instant before the reach came home, and they lived, and they fled back toward the muster dark with the readings, and it was from those 30 that the all-coherence first learned and disbelieved the shape of what waited beyond the line. They were brave, the 30. I want that recorded. But they were brave in the one direction my people had never learned to be brave, which was the direction of not reaching, and they had to invent the courage in the half instant they had, with no training and no word for it, against 9,000 years of everything they were. Most of the second choir did not invent it in time. Most of the second choir was made of keepers exactly like the high keeper, who would later reach for a recording in the muster chamber to prove the wall was a door, keepers who could not in the moment stop being what they were, and who reached and whose reach came home. The human ship did not distinguish between the brave and the rest. It did not reward the 30 or punish the others. It simply held its value, the same to everyone, the same forever, and let each keeper's own reaching decide whether that keeper lived. The ones who stopped, lived. The ones who could not stop did not. The wall kept no account of it. The wall never keeps an account. It is the thing the account is kept against. There never was. I have turned those 3 words over for the rest of my life, and I have never found the bottom of them. There never was a thing here to fight. We had brought 1,100 hulls and then 40,000 more to fight a thing that had told us, twice plainly, that there was nothing to fight, and we had not believed it, because to believe it was to believe in a wall, and we did not believe in walls. It's right, Down said. He had gone past the flat place now, into the place beyond it where you start to laugh, and the laugh is the worst sound a person can make. It's right, Overs. There never was. We did all of it to ourselves, every hull. We leaned and it didn't move, and he stopped. He put his hands on his own bench, on the dead numbers of it, and he did not finish. Taryn let him not finish. Then she did the thing that I think saved what was left of us, which was that she gave us work. Survey the wreck, she said, not the human ship, ours. I want to know what the rebound did, exactly, at the level of the law. I want to bring home a thing the all-coherence cannot disbelieve. We have lost 41,000 hulls to a value that would not change. If we go home with grief, they will send the third choir. If we go home with the reading, the exact reading, the law of how the wall answers, they will not, because they will finally be able to see the wall. She paused. That is the only thing worth carrying out of this. The reading that ends the reaching. Get me the reading. So we surveyed our own dead. I will not pretend it was easy work. It was the worst work of my life. Reading the broken laws of 40,000 hulls that had been people I trained beside, each of them a value that had spent itself reaching and been undone by the spending. But it was a reading. And a reading is the one thing my people have always been able to bear. And we did it. The 6 of us in the 4 hulls of the first choir, across the next 40 hours, in the empty dark beside the human ship that did not once look at us while we did it. And what the reading told me changed the shape of my grief, because the reading was not a story about a weapon. The human ship had no weapon, and the reading proved it. There was no energy that had come from the human hull. There was no force that had crossed the space. Every jewel that had unmade the choirs of revision had come from the choirs of revision. The exact agreement we had spent returned along the exact channels we had opened, falling on the exact benches that had opened them. The human ship had contributed nothing to its own defense but the fact of its existence. It had been a wall. We had been the whole of the impact and the whole of the wreck. It is the cleanest thing I have ever read, I told Taryn, and I meant it, and it horrified me to mean it. There is no attack here to find. There is only us, reaching, and a value that would not change, and our reach coming home. A child could read it. The all-coherence will be able to read it. I looked at the empty dark where 40,000 hulls had been. They built a thing that cannot be made to attack because it does not have to. We supply the attack. We always have. We just never met a thing that gave it all back. While we surveyed, the human ship was joined. I want to set this down carefully because it is the part where the thing I had understood about one ship became the thing I understood about all of them, and the second understanding was so much larger than the first. On the 41st hour of our survey of our own dead, a second human hull dropped out of the dark and took station beside the first. It did not announce itself with the channel. It simply was there, where it had not been 2,100 meters of the same ugly patient alloy, the same single fixed value worn as a coat, and it took station and it went still and it waited, a second wall beside the first. Then a third, then, over the next 2 days, the rest. 41. They had told us 41 and they had meant 41, and now I watched the fixed fleet of the humans assemble in the dark beside our wreck, one constant after another, each of them a thing that did not move and could not be measured and would answer any reach with the reach itself, until there were 41 fixed points hanging in formation where the second choir of revision had died, the whole of the human war make, the entire reference set against which a changing universe was measured. 41 walls, holding station, in a dark my people had ruled for 9,000 years. They did not come for us. I need that understood because it is the most human thing in the whole account and the thing I least expected. They had 41 hulls, and we had 4 and 6 broken benches, and any fleet of our make in their place would have closed the distance and finished the survey of us the way we had finished the survey of 600 worlds. They did not. They assembled and they held station, and they did not reach for us because they did not reach for anything. Reaching was not a thing they did. They were references. A reference does not pursue. It stands and is correct and lets everything else be measured against the standing. The channel opened one last time, on the third day when the 41st hull had taken its place. This is the fixed fleet, the flat voice said, and I understood now that it was not one voice, that it had never been one voice, that it was the fleet's single shared answer spoken through whichever hull happened to be nearest. We're escorting you to the edge of your own claimed dark. You'll carry a message to whatever rules you. Here it is. We are not a fleet you fight. We're a thing you measure against. As long as no one reaches for us, no one is harmed by us. We have stood in this dark for 600 years, and we have ended 2 parties before you, and both times it was the same. They reached, and the reach came home, and we did not move. We are still not moving. We will never move. That is the entire weapon, and there is no defense against it, because there is nothing to defend against. Stop reaching. Go home. Tell them the meter does not bend. And then, after a pause, the only thing it ever said that was not flat, the only thing in the whole account that I have let myself believe was meant as a kindness. We're sorry about your 40,000. We told them to stand off. We tell everyone to stand off. Almost no one does. A pause. You did at the end. Your survey ship did. That's why we're letting you carry it home instead of letting you reach a third time. Someone among you understood. Keep that one near the front when you tell it. I looked at Taryn when it said that, and Taryn did not look at me, but her hands, which had reached and leaned and edited the reel for longer than I had been alive, lay still on the high bench, And I understood that the human fleet had read her the way she read everything, slowly and completely, and had found in the survey ship's withdrawal the one value among us that had finally agreed to stop changing, that had finally held still, and had decided that a thing capable of holding still was a thing worth letting live. We were the value that did not change at the end, the smallest one, the only one. 6 broken benches and 4 first choir hulls that had stopped reaching, in a coherence that could not stop, escorted home by 41 walls, through a dark that had stopped being ours the moment we put a measuring light on a thing that could not be measured. On the second day of the escort, before dawn broke, one of the 4 first choir hulls reached for the human ship. I did not order it, and Terran did not order it, and to this day I do not fully know what moved the keeper aboard that hull to do it, except that I understand it the way I understand my own hands, because it is the thing my whole people are made of. The keeper had watched 1,100 die, and then 40,000, and the keeper could not make the watching into sense, because the sense the keeper had been built with said there is no value that cannot be moved, and a mind cannot hold a thing that unmakes its own foundation without trying one more time to prove the foundation true. So the keeper reached. 1 hull, 1 bench, the smallest reach in this whole account, a single lawkeeper leaning a single will against the human standard, almost gently, almost like a question. I felt it on my own bench, the way you feel a thing you have been dreading finally arrive. And I did the only thing there was to do, which was to scream across the short channel for the keeper to break it, break the reach, take the will off the hull, and the keeper heard me, and the keeper tried, and it was not fast enough, because nothing is fast enough when you have already touched the wall. The reach came home. 1 reach, 1 keeper. The first choir hull went quiet on the array, 1 value winking out, and then it was 3 hulls escorting us instead of 4, and the human ship had not moved, had not turned, had not registered the single reach as anything at all, because a single reach against a wall is the same to the wall as 40,000, which is to say it is nothing, which is to say it is only ever a wound the reacher gives himself. Why? Down whispered. Why would he? Because he could not stop being what he is, Terran said. And there was grief in it now, the first grief I had heard from her. And I understood that the grief was not only for the dead keeper, it was for all of us. That is the whole of it, lawkeeper. That is the thing the human fleet has understood about us better than we understand ourselves. We cannot stop reaching. It is not a choice we keep failing to make. It is the shape of the thing we are. We are the editors of the real, and an editor confronted with a thing it cannot edit will reach for it until the reaching kills him, because stop reaching is to stop being an editor, and a thing would rather die than stop being. She looked at the human hull, patient off our prow. They knew that. They built 41 walls, and they did not need to build 42, because they understood that a thing like us will always supply its own destruction if you simply refuse to move. We are the weapon. They are only the surface we break it on. It was on that day with 3 hulls left where there had been 4 that I finally stopped hoping the human ship would do something, would turn, would speak a threat, would be a thing we could understand by what it did. It would never do anything. That was the entire horror of it and the entire genius of it. Every other power in the dark we had ever met, we had understood by what it did to us, and we had edited it accordingly. The human fleet did nothing to us. It only existed, fixed, and let us do everything to ourselves, and there is no editing a thing that gives you nothing to edit, no winning against a wall that throws nothing, no surviving an enemy that is only ever the shape of your own reach coming home. I took the survey light fully off the array after that, every wavelength, and I sat the 3 remaining hulls and the broken quiet audit in a discipline of perfect not reaching. And we were 9 more days like that, holding still beside a thing that had taught us stillness at the cost of 41,000 hulls, learning, far too late and far too dearly, the one lesson my people had gone 9,000 years without ever needing to learn, which was how to leave a thing alone. The escort took 9 days, and for 9 days I sat at a bench that no longer had benches beside it and watched a human wall hold station off our prow, 2,100 meters of a value that would not change, leading the 4 broken hulls of the coherence home through the dark we had lost. They did not crowd us. 1 hull took the lead, 1 took the rear, and the other 39 stayed back at the edge of the dark we were leaving, a line of fixed points strung across the border of our former claim like the marks on a ruler. The 2 that escorted us did nothing the entire 9 days but exist at the correct distance, never reaching, never measuring, never so much as turning a port toward us, because there was no need. They were the standard, and the standard does not chase the thing it has corrected. On the 4th day, dawn broke. It was quiet when it happened, which was the worst of it. He had been reading and rereading the survey of our own dead, the clean reading, the one with no attack in it, And somewhere in the rereading, he found the thing I had found and had not said aloud, which was that we could have stopped this at any point and the human ship would have let us. After the first hail, after the first rebound, after Terran took our light off the hull. At every single moment, the human ship had offered the same exit, standoff, and we had declined it, the way we declined everything by reaching. It was never going to hurt us, Down said to no one, to his dead bench, overs. At any second, we could have just stopped. It was a wall. You walk away from a wall. You don't have to run into a wall. We ran 41,000 hulls into a wall that was telling us to walk away. He laughed a terrible laugh again. We are the editors of the real, and we could not edit the one thing that mattered, which was the part of us that could not stop reaching. Terran went to him. She did not edit him, did not soothe him with a revision of how it felt, because she had finally understood, in the wreck of the second choir, what the human fleet had built itself to teach. That there are things you do not change, that there is a value in a person that should be allowed to hold still. She sat with him. She let him be the value he was. And after a while he stopped, not because she fixed him, but because she didn't. And I think that was the first wholly human thing anyone aboard the Quiet Audit had ever done, and we learned it from a wall. On the seventh day, the long channel reached us from home. The all-coherence had been silent since the second choir went out. Now, with the second choir gone, it spoke, and I read the order off the channel and my substance went cold, because the order was exactly the one Tyran had said it would be. The all-coherence did not believe in the wall. It had read our reports, all of them, the survey ship's 40 benches, the deep consensus of 40,000, the clean reading with no attack in it, and it had found in all of that not a wall but an anomaly, a value the two choirs had failed to move. And the answer of a thing that rules by revision, when a value will not move, is never to stop reaching. It is to reach harder. The order on the channel mustered the third choir. There is no third choir, I said. Overs, there isn't. The second choir was the deep reserve. There's nothing behind it but. Behind it is everything, Terran said quietly. Every editing hull in every quieted world, the garrison consensus. The order is to strip the 600 worlds of their keepers and bring all of it here, the whole standing weight of 9,000 years of conquest, and lean it on the value at once. They believe a value that resists 40,000 benches will yield to 400,000. They cannot conceive of a number that does not scale its resistance to the size of the push. They have never met a wall. They have only met heavy doors that needed more shoulders. She looked at the human hull off our prow. If that order is obeyed, every lawkeeper the coherence possesses will reach for the meter bar at once, and the meter bar will not move, and the reach of the whole order will come home to the whole order. There will not be a coherence after that. There will be 600 worlds with no keepers and a human fleet that did not move, and us. Then we have to stop the order, I said. With what? She said. We are a survey ship and 4 first choir hulls. The all-coherence does not take counsel from the surveyed. And the human channel opened, because of course it had been listening. A thing that registers a measurement attempt across 400,000 kilometers does not miss a long channel order to muster the entire order. We heard that, the flat voice said. Your masters are calling everything in. To reach for us a third time with all of it. A pause. We'd like to stop that from happening. Not for our sake. It doesn't touch us. For the 600 worlds that are about to lose every keeper they have to a reach that comes home, and for the worlds those keepers were holding things together on. A reach that big, coming home all at once. It doesn't just unmake the reachers. The unmaking has to land somewhere. The frame of the whole quieted region would take it. Your 600 worlds would feel the meter not moving, and they didn't do anything but get conquered by you. The voice was quiet. We don't want that on the standard. A reference shouldn't be the cause of that much change, even change it didn't make. So we're going to give you something to carry that's louder than the reading.
What? Terran said.
A demonstration, the human fleet said. You've carried a reading, and they disbelieved it, because a reading is a number, and they're sure they can move any number. So we'll give them a thing they can't disbelieve. We'll let your survey ship watch one of us be reached for, by a force we choose, a controlled reach, one hull against the wall, so you can carry home not the reading but the watching. The all-coherence won't believe a report. It might believe the one lawkeeper who stood off, who withdrew, who held still, describing in her own register what she saw a single ship do to the whole weight thrown at it. You're not bringing them a number anymore. You're bringing them a witness. Stand by. We'll show you exactly what the third reach buys. I read the muster of the third choir as it began, because the long array carried it, whether I wished to see it or not, and what I read was the dismantling of 9,000 years. The order had gone to the 600 quieted worlds, and the keepers were lifting from all of them at once. Every quieted world in the coherence was held quiet by a garrison of editors, Keepers on the ground who kept the conquered laws conquered, who leaned at night, a small steady consensus against the local reality so that the world stayed revised, stayed small, stayed silent. 600 worlds, each with its weight of standing keepers, and the order stripped them all. The garrison consensus rose off the 600 worlds and turned as one toward the muster dark and the human standard waiting beyond the line. And I read, on the array, what happened to the 600 worlds when their keepers lifted. They began to wake. This is a thing the all-coherence did not account for, because the all-coherence had never in 9,000 years lifted all its keepers at once. A quieted world is not a dead world. It is a living world held down, its own laws revised smaller, its own reality leaned upon, and the moment the leaning stops, the world begins, slowly, to argue its way back toward what it was. I watched 600 conquered realities stir under the array as their garrisons departed, 600 worlds beginning, for the first time in centuries, to remember their own values, and I understood that the all-coherence was not merely about to lose 40,000 or 400,000 hulls to a reach that would come home. It was about to lose the 600 worlds those hulls had been holding, because you cannot strip every keeper from the whole of an empire to throw at a single wall without the empire. In that instant, beginning to come undone behind you. Overs, I said, the worlds. They're stripping the garrisons. The worlds are waking. Taryn read it where I pointed, and I watched her see the full shape of it, the way she saw everything completely and a little too late to matter. Of course they are, she said softly. The all-coherence has never once chosen between holding what it has and reaching for what it cannot. It has never had to. There has always been a way to reach harder without letting go. And now, for the first time, the wall has forced a choice, and the all-coherence is choosing the reach. It will throw the keepers of 600 worlds at a value that will not move, and the reach will come home and unmake the keepers. And the 600 worlds already waking will be free, and the coherence will be gone, all of it, in the time it takes a returning consensus to find its way back to the benches that sent it. She was quiet. It is not even a war. It is a thing that cannot stop reaching one final time, into a thing that will not move and ending itself on the not moving, and freeing everything it ever held in the same motion. The human fleet will not have fired a shot. It will simply have been the wall, and we will have run our entire self into it, and the universe will be larger and quieter for our absence, and the meter will not have been a hair. The human channel had said the thing we now watched coming true. A reach that big, coming home all at once, the unmaking has to land somewhere. The frame of the whole quieted region would take it. I had thought when the human voice said it, that it was a threat. It was not a threat. It was a measurement. The human fleet had simply read across the dark the exact consequence of the order the all-coherence was about to give, and reported it flatly, the way you report a number, because reporting numbers was the only language a thing built to be a reference had ever needed. And then the human fleet had offered to stop it, not by reaching for us, not by destroying the muster, because it did not reach and it did not destroy. It had offered the only thing a wall can ever offer, which is a thing to measure against, a demonstration, a witness. The one lawkeeper who had stopped reaching, carrying home in her own voice, the watching that no report could carry, to a coherence that was 9,000 years deep in the habit of never once standing off. I did not believe it would be enough. I sat at my broken bench and watched 600 worlds wake and 40,000 keepers, and then 400,000 converge on the muster dark, and I did not believe that one survey overs and the watching she carried would stop the whole weight of my people from reaching, one last time, for the wall. Nothing had ever stopped that reach. The reach was what we were. But I had also watched two human standards lean the weight of the second choir against a third and live, because there was nothing soft in them to die. And I had watched my own overs out in the broken dark sit beside a breaking junior and not edit him, let him be the value he was, hold still where every instinct in her was built to reach. I had watched her become by degrees across 9 days the one thing my people had never been, which was a being that could feel a value that would not move and take its hand off it. If anything could carry that home, it was her, and if she could not, then the human fleet had measured us correctly, and we would end the way we had always lived, reaching, and the dark would be larger for it. What the human fleet did then I have described to the all-coherence, and to the council of keepers beneath it, and to 9 separate inquests, and I have never once described it the same way twice, because there is no fixed way to describe a thing whose entire nature is that it is the only fixed thing there is. They reached for one of their own. I did not understand it at first. One of the 41 hulls broke from the line at the edge of the dark and crossed to the 2 that escorted us, and the 3 of them took station in a triangle 100 kilometers wide. And then, I read it on the array. I read it law by law. 2 of the hulls began to reach for the 3rd, not with a weapon. They had no weapons. They reached the way we reached, with agreement, with a leaning of will against a value, except that what they leaned was not the coherence's unmaking. It was something I had no name for, a pressure I had never read, the deliberate and enormous attempt of two fixed standards to make a third standard change. They're surveying each other, down breathed Overs. They're doing to one of their own what we did. They're showing us the wall from the inside, Terran said. Watch, this is the demonstration. This is the thing the all-coherence cannot disbelieve. Read all of it, Lawkeeper. Read it for the both of us, because they chose us to carry it. I read it. I read the two human hulls lean a reach against the third with a will I could only measure as larger than the second choir's, two references demanding that a third reference change. And I read the third hull do exactly what it had done to us, what all of them did to everything, which was nothing. It held its value, it did not move. And the reach of the two hulls, the largest single reach I had ever read that was not the coherence's own, met the immovable third value and broke on it and came home to the two that had sent it, and the two human hulls did not die. That is the thing I carried home. That is the thing no reading could have given the all-coherence, and no argument of mine ever fully gave it either, though they let me live for trying. When the coherence reached for the wall, the reach came home and unmade the reachers, because the coherence's reach was an unmaking, and there was nothing left for it to unmake but the unmakers. But when one human standard reached for another, the reach came home and found a thing built to receive it, found a value that did not need to give, because it was already a reference, already fixed, already the kind of thing a returning reach simply measures itself against and stops. The two hulls took the full weight of their own reach come home, and held their values, and were exactly as they had been before, because a wall that runs into a wall is just two walls, and neither moves and nothing breaks. It is not the human ship that kills us, I said, very slowly, understanding the whole of it at last. It never was. It is the unmaking we put into the reach. Anything that reaches for the wall and is built of changing things dies, because its own change comes home. Anything that reaches for the wall and is built of fixed things lives, because there is nothing in it left to change. They are not invulnerable because they are strong. They're invulnerable because there is nothing soft in them for the rebound to land on. We are killed by the rebound because we are nothing but soft places. We are all argument. They are all answer. Terran had gone still in the deep way, the admitting way. That is what we carry home, she said. Not that the human ship is dangerous. That the danger is the reaching, and the reaching is ours. And the only beings in the universe who can survive reaching for them are beings that have stopped being able to change, which is to say beings that have become like them, which is to say no longer us. The all-coherence wants to throw 400,000 reaching hulls at the wall. We have just watched the only thing in existence that can survive that throw, and it is the wall throwing it at itself. We cannot do what they did. We are not made of held values. We are made of moving ones. That is what made us strong for 9,000 years, and it is exactly the thing that kills us now. The channel opened a final time. You have it now, the human fleet said, both of you. The engineer read the law and the overs read the meaning, and that's the witness we needed you to be. So here's the last of it, to carry whole. A pause. We didn't build 41 ships to win a war. You can't win against the changing. There's always more of it, always a bigger reach, always a deeper choir. We built 41 ships to stop being something the changing could win against. We took the one thing every weapon needs, a thing that holds still to be aimed from, a thing that holds still to be aimed at, and we made ourselves into it all the way down until there was no soft place anywhere in us for any reach to land. We are not your enemy. An enemy is a thing you can fight. We are the floor your reach falls through and the wall your reach comes back from. Tell them the meter does not bend and the clock does not drift and the human standard does not move, and that the only ones who survive learning this are the ones who stop reaching the moment they feel it. 2 parties before you reached 3 times. None of their witnesses understood in time. Yours did. Go home, carry it. The escort fell away at the edge of the dark. 41 fixed points, holding the border of a claim that had been ours for 9,000 years, and was now simply the line past which a thing existed that we could not measure, could not move, could not fight, and could only flee from by stopping, by holding still, by becoming, for 1 withdrawn survey ship and 4 broken hulls, the kind of value that does not reach. We crossed the line the human fleet did not follow. It held station, 41 walls in the dark, and watched us go the way a standard watches everything go, without moving, because it is the thing the going is measured against. There was a keeper in the muster chamber who did not believe Terran, and I have thought about that keeper as much as I have thought about anything, because that keeper was my whole people distilled into one will, and the way that keeper failed to believe was the way we had failed to believe for 9,000 years. His name does not matter. He was a high keeper of the standing order, and he had quieted worlds before Terran was born, and he listened to her describe the wall and the reach that comes home, and he did not hear a wall. He heard fear. He heard a survey-overs who had lost her nerve in the dark and come home counseling surrender to a value which was, to a high keeper of the coherence, the one obscenity there was. We did not surrender to values, we revised them. You watched a small consensus fail, he said, and you have decided the universe contains a thing that cannot be moved. I have quieted 40 worlds overs, and on each of them there was a law I was told could not be moved, and I moved it. The survey ship failed because the survey ship was 40 benches. The choir failed because the choir was 40,000. You have not shown us a wall. You have shown us a value we have not yet reached for correctly. I will show you what correct reaching looks like. And he reached. There was no human ship in the muster chamber. There was no wall within 400,000 kilometers in a 9-day journey of that place. But the High Keeper, to prove his certainty, reached anyway. Reached for the memory of the value, for the reading we had carried home, for the recorded law of the human standard that sat in the coherence archive now as a number like any other number. He leaned the full weight of a High Keeper's will against the recorded value, certain that the recording, at least, the mere number of it, would yield to a master's reach where the living thing had not. It did not yield. And I understood, watching him strain against a recording of a thing that was not even present, that the human fleet had been more thorough than any of us had grasped. They had let us survey them. They had let us carry home the reading. And the reading they let us carry was itself a fixed value, a true record of a thing that does not change, which is itself a thing that does not change, so that even the memory of the human standard, even the number of it sitting in our own archive, could not be edited, could not be revised downward into something more comfortable, could not be made to mean less than it meant. They had put the wall in our archive. The wall was in the room with us in the only form it needed to be, which was the truth of itself, and the truth of itself would not bend. The High Keeper reached for the recording, and the recording held its value, and his reach came home there, in the chamber, in front of the whole standing weight of the all-coherence, and it did not kill him, because it was a small reach against a small recording. But it cost him. I watched the rebound take something out of him, not his life, but his certainty, the load-bearing thing, the value at the center of every keeper that says there is no wall. He had reached for proof that the wall was a door, and the proof had come home and shown him the wall was a wall, and he stood in the muster chamber with his certainty rebounded into him, and he had nothing left to say, because the thing he had said for 90 years had just declined to be true in front of everyone. That is the smallest possible reach, Terran said into the silence, against the smallest possible piece of it, and it took your certainty and gave you nothing. Now multiply it. The order before the all-coherence is to lean 400,000 reaching hulls against the living standard all at once. The High Keeper has just shown you, with his own will, exactly what that buys. It does not buy a moved value. It buys the reach returned to all of it at the same instant. He felt it as the loss of his certainty. The coherence will feel it as the loss of the coherence. She looked at the assembled weight of my people, 9,000 years of it, gathered to reach one last time. The human fleet did not send us home to frighten you. It sent us home so that you would not have to learn this the way the High Keeper just learned it, except at the scale of everything. It gave us the witness so you could be the first party in 600 years to stand off before the third reach instead of after it. There is no after the third reach. That is the whole of what we carry. Stand off or stop existing. Those are the only two values left, and only one of them does not change. The all-coherence had already begun to muster the third choir when we crossed the home threshold, and I will tell you plainly that I did not think we would stop it, because nothing in 9,000 years had ever stopped the order from reaching for a value that would not yield. The garrison consensus was assembling. The order had gone to the 600 quieted worlds, and from each of them the keepers were lifting the standing weight that had held those worlds silent, 400,000 editing hulls converging toward the muster dark to be leaned, all at once against the human standard. I watched the count climb on the long array as we came in, and every hull that joined it was a world somewhere going unwatched, and every one of them was about to reach for the wall and feel its reach come home, and the homecoming of a reach that size would land on the frame of the whole quieted region. On the 600 worlds the keepers had just left undefended, the all-coherence would not stop for a report. So Terran did not bring it a report, she brought it a witness, and the witness was herself, and the witness was me. I cannot tell you everything that was said in the muster chamber, because much of it was the kind of thing that is said once, and then unsaid by everyone who survived to be ashamed of it. But I can tell you the shape of it. The all-coherence convened to confirm the muster, certain, as it had been certain for 9,000 years, that a value resisting 40,000 benches was simply a value that had not yet met 400,000. And Taryn stood before the whole standing weight of my people's certainty. A survey overs with 4 broken hulls behind her, and she did not argue the number. She had learned out in the dark that you cannot argue a number with a thing that believes all numbers bend. So she did not bring a number, she brought the watching. She described what she had seen one human ship do to 40,000. Not the reading, the watching, the wall that did not move, the reach that came home, the 51 seconds. And then she described the thing the human fleet had shown us at the end, 2 standards reaching for a third and living, because there was nothing soft in them to die, and she said, to the whole assembled certainty of my people, the thing that finally cracked it. You wish to throw 400,000 reaching hulls at the wall. I have watched the only kind of being that can survive that throw, and it is the wall throwing it at itself. We are not that kind of being. We are made of values that change. That is the whole of our strength, and it is the exact mechanism of our death. The reach will come home. It always comes home. The only question the all-coherence has ever truly asked of the universe is how hard to reach, and the human standard is the first thing in 9,000 years to answer a different question, which is whether to reach at all. The answer it gives is no. It gives that answer to 4 hulls and to 40,000, and it would give it unchanged to 400,000, because a standard does not scale its no. If we muster the third choir, we will not lose a battle. We will simply stop. The reach will come home to all of it at once, and there will be no coherence after. And the 600 worlds will feel the weight of our whole reach landing on their frame, and the human fleet will not have moved a meter because there was never anything there to fight. There was only us, reaching, and a thing that would not change. It is a strange thing to watch certainty die. My people had been certain for 9,000 years, and certainty had been the engine of every world we quieted. And now I watched it go out of the muster chamber the way the values had gone out of the array beside the second choir, not in fire, just quiet, just one mind after another arriving at the wall, and for the first time, choosing not to run into it. The all-coherence stood down the third choir. I do not want to make it sound like wisdom. It was not wisdom. It was the first time in 9,000 years that my people met a thing they could not edit, and the only choice the universe left them was to stop reaching or to stop existing, and they chose, barely, by the narrowest agreement ever recorded, to stop reaching. The garrison consensus dispersed. The keepers returned to the 600 worlds. The order to lean the whole standing weight of the coherence against the human standard was withdrawn, and the dark beyond the line stayed the dark beyond the line, and the 41 walls held their border, and we did not reach for them again. We have not reached for them since. It has been 400 years. I am old now by the measure of my kind, and I have spent those 400 years as the law-keeper who carried it home, the one the human fleet kept near the front. The all-coherence still edits. We are still the editors of the real. You do not unmake 9,000 years of yourself in a single chastening. But there is a line in the dark now that no survey crosses, and a value beyond it that no consensus reaches for, and every young keeper who comes to the third bench is taught the one law that the whole survey of the human standard reduced to, the law that the quiet audit carried out of the dark and that I have spent my life making sure is never forgotten. The law is this: there are things you do not change, and the first wisdom of a being that changes everything is to know one of them when you find it, to feel the value that will not flinch, and to take your reaching hand off it, and to stand off, and to let it be the thing it is. We learned that law from a wall. 41 walls, holding station in a dark we used to rule, 2,100 meters each of a single fixed value wearing alloy like a coat, that never fired a weapon, never turned, never moved, and ended the deep reserve of the coherence in 51 seconds by the simple refusal to be measured. We had scanned that first wall for every variable a thing can have. We found its length and its alloy and its power. We measured everything about it except the one thing that held the rest up, the one thing our whole art could not read because our whole art was built on its opposite. We never measured whether it would change. It would not. It never will. And somewhere out past the line we used to call ours, it is still there exactly where it was, doing exactly the one thing it does, which is nothing, which is the most terrible thing in the dark. Being a value that does not move, in a universe full of things like us, that are nothing but the moving.